right, for day 27, I want you to go ahead and download and print out the copy of the Writing Linear Equations PDF that you can find on D2L. And for this warm-up, I want you to go ahead and write the slope-intercept form of the equation for the line. So remember, slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b, so that means you need to identify what is the slope and what is the y-intercept. So see if you can figure out what that is from each picture, and then go ahead and plug them into the equation. All right, hopefully you were able to get what I got here. So here's my answer key. And for the first one, you can see that we got a slope of -3/2. So we went up 3/2 in the negative direction. And then you can see the y-intercept is at +4. So that actually gives you the equation y equals -3/2 x plus 4. For number 2, you can see the solution there. And for 3 and for 4. Hopefully those went okay. The idea is to find those nice lattice points, meaning points that fall exactly on the grid, so that way you can easily figure out what the slope is. So for example, like on number 4, I can see that point right there, and then another nice lattice point maybe is like right about here. I think it's the only ones that I see. And then I can count the slope, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3 over. So I can make that ratio of change in y to change in x, so 5/3, and then my y-intercept is at 3. Here are the solutions to the next 4, so 5, 6, 7, and 8. And hopefully those went okay as well. From the picture, it's actually really nice, assuming you have a nice solid y-intercept, meaning it's not like a fractional value where you're trying to approximate. Using the graph is a really nice way to estimate, or actually not even estimate, to determine what the equation is of the line. For these next examples, I'm going to give you certain information, and from that information, I want you to actually write the equation of the line. So for this first one, I'm going to tell you that the slope is 3 and that the line passes through the point 0, -6. You may want to print out extra graph paper here and actually plot this information and really get a good visualization of what's happening. So you can go ahead and do that, and then pause the video and join us when you have that pretty picture. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of extract the important information that I see. We have a slope of 3. So my slope is going to be 3. That's going to be my m value. And then notice it's going to go through the point 0, -6. Now this happens to be like a present for you guys, because 0, -6 is a very, 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 very special point. And that happens to be the y-intercept. It is the y-intercept because x is 0. If that was any other point other than 0 right there for the x-coordinate, then it would not be the y-intercept, and it wouldn't be this nice. So if I know this information, if I know the slope is 3 and the y-intercept is at -6, I can directly plug into y equals mx plus b and get my equation. So we're going to get y equals 3x minus 6. For the next one, this one is not going to be quite as nice. The slope is still 3, so I can make that information or put that information off to the side. And now it's going to pass through the point -2, +1. So there's a few strategies here that we can use. It doesn't really matter to me which one you have. I just want you to find one that makes sense to you. So if I know I have a point -2, 1 and I have a slope, we're going to kind of have to work a little bit backwards here to see if we can determine what that y-intercept is. Knowing that slope means I know my change in y over my change in x. So I'm trying to find out what is y when x is 0. So I want to see if I can kind of follow this pattern and determine what my y-intercept will be based on this pattern. So if my change in y is 3, each step that I do this way, I'm going to be adding 3. And then if I go ahead and follow that same pattern for my x values, I'm going to be changing those by +1. So let's just kind of fill in the blanks here. 1 plus 3 is going to give me 4, and 4 plus 3 is going to give me 7. I now know what my y-intercept is, so I can go ahead and write my equation. So it'd be y equals 3x plus 7. Some folks might want to write this as 3/1x plus 7. That is totally fine. it means the exact same thing, and visually I think that's a little bit nicer because now you can really see what your rise is and what your run is. If you would like an alternative approach to solving this one, if you want more of like an algebra technique to do this, I'll show that to you over here off to the side. If we work with the equation y equals mx plus b, let's plug in what we know. So you know 3 is m. Now x and y stay just x and y, and I don't know what the b value is. But since we are given an ordered pair, -2 is my x and 1 is my y, I could temporarily plug those in. So plug in 1 for y and -2 for x. And then that means I only have one unknown in the equation, and that means I can solve for that. So 1 equals -6 plus b, and then I need to legally move that -6 over, so I'm going to add +6 to both sides. And so that gives me a b value of 7. And then from there, I would plug in y equals 3x plus 7. Okay, so that's an alternative way to do it. Both ways are fantastic. You can kind of pick the way that makes most sense to you. I really like this purple method over here if it's hard to follow the pattern and determine what the y-intercept is going to be. So the purple way will always work, and the table way really only works when you can easily, follow the pattern and figure out what your value is going to be. All right, how about this next one? So we're going to go through the points -2, 6, and through the point 1, 0. So this doesn't give me a whole lot of information. I don't have a y-intercept. Don't be tempted by this. It's not the y-intercept because x is not 0. And I also don't know my slope here. So maybe the first thing we need to do is let's find our slope. So you can use the slope equation or you can set it up in a table. I'm kind of a table person, so I'm going to show you this for right now. And let's go ahead and determine the slope. So change in y looks like it went down by 6 units. And my change in x, looks like it went up, by 3 units right here. So we're going to say my slope, my m value, is going to be -6 over +3, which would simplify down to a -2. So I know my slope. I don't know my y-intercept. Now, this slope right here of -2, if you want to think about it as -2 over 1, and I might just put my little change in y over change in x right over there just to remind myself. I could go ahead and use my table to help me figure this out. So -2, -1, 0. Now, I don't want to make quite as big of jumps right here from -2 to +1. I want to make little baby jumps. And that's kind of what helps by breaking down the slope and simplifying it as much as possible. Means every time that I'm going to be making a jump here on my y values, I'm going to be going down by 2, right? Wouldn't that be down by 2, and then down by 2 again to get me down to the 0? And then this 1 here in the denominator means my x values are going to be going up by 1 each time. And so that's one way I can kind of break it down and help me figure out that my y-intercept is going to be a +2. And then we can put the equation together and get y equals -2x plus 2, because there's my y-intercept. If you don't like that way and you want to try it the other way, well, here we go. You would still have to start out by finding your slope. So I'm going to use that information because we did already find that. So we're going to have our slope be -2. Now, you have a choice. You have 2 points that you can pick to plug in for. It doesn't matter which one you pick. They'll both give you the exact same y-intercept because hopefully that would make sense. They're going to be on the same line. So you can use any one of those pieces of information to help you get the y-intercept. I might pick the point 1, 0 just because that one looks a little bit nicer. And I'm going to plug it in. So y equals m times x plus b. Y equals mx plus b. And now I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation. -2 times 1 is -2, and then I have my plus b. And here we go. Let's add 2 to both sides, and let's see what we get. Oops, I keep picking different purples. So my y-intercept here is 2. So then I can put it all together. Y equals -2x plus 2. So any one of those strategies works. You pick your favorite. All right, let's try another one. This is going to be a little bit trickier here. So the line passes through the point 4, -1, and is parallel now to the line y equals 3x plus 1. So this is kind of crazy. If we have this parallel to a line that we know, remember what's true about parallel lines? Parallel lines have the exact same slope. So that means you need to go to this equation and identify what the slope is. Well, this slope is 3. So we're going to use that information. Now, I don't need anything else from this equation. So I'm just going to kind of cross that out and not even look at it. And now we can go ahead and we're going to find out what the y-intercept is going to be. I might use the equation for this one. So y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug in what I know. 4 is my x value and -1 is my y value. So I'm going to have -1 equals 3 times 4 plus b. And let's see what we get. 3 times 4 is 12. And so I'm going to have 12 plus b on that side. And then let's legally solve this equation. So let's take away 12 from both sides. And here we go. -13 equals b. Now put all this information together. Y equals 3x minus 13 would be that linear relationship to model this line. My kids are here right now, so if you hear...
A bear took our food. Yeah.
Oh, and a bear took my kids' food. So guys, can you give me one more minute? Sorry about that, team. All right, so now our last example here is the line passes through the point -2, -2, and is now, perpendicular to the line y equals 1/3 x minus 5. So remember about perpendicular lines, we know their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So if this slope is negative or is positive 1/3, the slope that we want to use is going to be the opposite sign. So that's going to make that a negative, and it's going to be the reciprocal. So that's going to be 3/1, which we could clean up and write that as -3. So we have a slope and we have a point. So let's go ahead and plug in our x and our y, and we're going to figure out what our equation is. So I'm going to write the equation, y equals mx plus b. And I really like it when the points end up being the same thing, because then I don't have to worry about messing up where my x and my y is. So -2 is my y coordinate, my slope is -3, my x is -2, and I'm solving for b. So let's go ahead and clean up what we can. So that's going to be 6 plus b. And let me switch my colors here, and we're going to take away 6 from both sides to be able to solve this equation for b. So -2 minus 6 is -8. So -8 is going to be my y-intercept. So I'm going to put that all together, and we're going to get y equals -3x plus -8, or you're welcome to write it as -3x minus 8. Either one of those would be awesome. All right, this last part here is I want you to pull up this sheet from D2L. It should be part of your notes. And I want you to go through and find the slope and find the y-intercept for all 8 of these equations. I already have my slope and y-intercept for these 4, and I have my slope and my y-intercept for the next 4 as well. But if you haven't come up with them yet, go ahead and take a moment and do that. And then we're going to be able to write the equation now from this table. So let's start with this blue one with number 1. If I know my slope is 2 and my y-intercept is 7, guess what? Y equals 2x plus 7. Let's go to the purple one. And if my slope is -3, I'm going to get y equals -3x. And if my y-intercept is -4, then my equation will be y equals -3x minus 4. All right, for the orange one here, I had to work a little bit harder on this one. I wasn't given the y-intercept in the table, so I went backwards 1 step. So that means I had to subtract 4 from the y values because I was subtracting 1 from the x values. So my equation would be y equals 4x minus 21. And let's take a look at this pink one here. So for the pink one, we have a slope of -5. And then I had to work really hard to get my y-intercept in this one because I had to go quite a ways to get what my y value would be when my x value is 0. If you don't want to do that, or you're not comfortable doing on that table that many steps, feel free to do what we did in the previous examples where we plugged into y equals mx plus b and we solved for the y-intercept. You could pick either one of these points, either the point -6, -4, or the point -5, -9, and that would work. All right, let's take a look at the last 4 here. So for number 5, the slope here is 5/2. So this is the first time we kind of have a funky fractional slope, but that's just fine. It did give me the y-intercept in there, so I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the equation. So y equals 5/2 x plus 3. And then for the purple one, we found our slope is -1/4. This one, interesting to find it, to find the y-intercept. If 0 is halfway in between -2 and +2, then halfway in between 5 and 4 would be 4.5. So that's what I did there using my table to help me find out what my y-intercept would be. So I'm going to get y equals -1/4 x plus 4.5. Now for the orange one, we have our slope of 2/5. They give me the y-intercept. I don't really care too much that these aren't pretty values. So it's going to be y equals 2/5 x plus 6/5. And last but not least, let's do the pink one here. My slope is 1/2 and my y-intercept is going to be 1.5. So y equals 1/2 x plus 1.5. To get that y-intercept there, since it's the 0 is going to fall right in there, it's going to be between the -1 and the +1. That means it's going to be halfway in between here. And so halfway in between 1 and 2 is going to be 1.5. Okay? So hopefully that went okay. Connect math homework for tonight with writing equations of lines. And we will have our quiz on Friday, and we'll have open office hours on Friday as well. So please let me know if you have any questions. I would be happy to help. I hope you guys are doing all right. And if my kids want to say hi to you guys, go ahead and say hi, team.
Hi.